Logan Davis had always been in control of his life, a respected vice president at a major bank in New York, with a promising future and a personal life perfectly aligned with the standards his family expected. But, on an unexpected night, while crossing the bustling streets of the city, he encounters a figure that would change everything. Evelyn, a young woman who had been pushed to the margins of society. What started as an act of charity quickly evolved into something much more complex when Logan realized that the connection between them was not merely a coincidence. From that moment on, the lines between his planned life and the unexpected chaos began to blur, leading him down a path that would put everything he thought was important at stake. But this journey was just beginning, and what Logan didn't know was that the choices he was about to make would have consequences that no amount of money could foresee. Beyond appearances, a love that redefined destinies. Logan Davis felt the weight of the day on his shoulders as he walked through the streets of New York, his thoughts still trapped in numbers and contracts. The city, which never slept, buzzed around him, but he was oblivious to the usual hustle and bustle. When he turned the corner to cut through a less busy street, something caught his attention. A figure huddled against the wall, barely protected by the thin coat that was no match for the biting wind. For a moment, he thought about just walking on. After all, how many times had he passed by people like that? New York was full of sad stories and interrupted destinies. But as he took another step, something made him stop. There was something different about that woman. The fragility of the scene contrasted with the invisible strength radiating from her, a strength that seemed to cry out for something more. Logan approached slowly, his expensive shoes crunching on the small stones on the sidewalk as he looked down, trying to find the face hidden beneath the tangled hair. She was awake but seemed oblivious to the world around her, her eyes fixed on some distant point he couldn't see. "Do you need help?" he asked, unsure of what he expected in response. The young woman slowly lifted her eyes, as if the words had crossed a dense barrier. Her eyes, despite the fatigue and cold, shone with an intensity Logan hadn't anticipated. It wasn't a common look. It wasn't the look of someone defeated by life. He saw something more there, an untold story, a past she seemed to want to hide, but that screamed for attention. "I don't need charity," she replied firmly, her voice hoarse but full of determination. Logan was taken aback, but he also felt challenged. There was something about her that prevented him from simply moving on, as he would have normally done. He felt an impulse he couldn't explain, a need to understand what lay behind that gaze. "It's not charity," he said, although he knew that in a way it was. "I just want to offer you a place to spend the night. It looks like it's going to rain." Her hesitation was palpable, but after a few seconds of silence, she nodded. He helped her to her feet, noticing how she trembled slightly from the cold. As they walked together, Logan couldn't help but wonder who she was and how she had ended up in that situation. But one thing he knew for sure: that night would change everything in a way he could never have imagined. What should have been a simple act of kindness opened doors he didn't know existed, and behind them lay secrets he never thought someone like her could carry. But at that moment, while they walked along the wet sidewalk, Logan could only think about what would come next, unaware that his life had just been turned upside down forever. In the days that followed that night, Logan couldn't get Evelyn out of his mind. He had taken the young woman to a small hotel, ensuring she had a warm bed and some food. He thought his part was done there, but fate seemed to have other plans. At work, the numbers that once brought him so much pleasure began to lose their meaning. Everything felt dull, lifeless, compared to the intensity of that brief encounter. He started questioning his own motivations. What had led him to help Evelyn? And why did she still occupy so much space in his thoughts? However, what intrigued him the most was the woman herself. Evelyn wasn't like the other people he had encountered in those circumstances. There was something about her that he couldn't define, something that pulled him closer, as if her story was intertwined with his in some way. Logan then decided to seek her out again. He returned to the hotel, half expecting that she would have left, but to his surprise, she was still there. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she seemed lost in her thoughts. But when he entered the room, she looked him directly in the eyes. "Evelyn, right?" he asked, trying to establish a connection. She simply nodded, her expression serious. "Why did you come back?" Logan didn't have a clear answer. "I don't know. Maybe because I want to know more about you." Evelyn let out a sad smile. "There's not much to know." "Something tells me there is," Logan insisted, feeling he was getting close to something important. The next moments were filled with silence. She finally sighed, as if too tired to resist. "You wouldn't understand, Logan. My past is something I try to leave behind. I'm not the person I used to be." He wanted to ask more, but felt that any pressure would make her retreat. He decided it was better to give it time, to let her feel safe before trying to unearth the secrets she kept so well guarded. As the weeks went by, Logan and Evelyn began to see each other more often. The conversations that were once short and formal started to become longer and more intimate. He realized there was much more to Evelyn than she let on. Each meeting revealed a different piece of her, but also brought up more questions than answers. Logan was attracted not only to Evelyn's beauty, but to her complexity. He wanted to know everything: who she was, where she came from, what had led her to that situation. But above all, he wanted to help her, to protect her from the world that seemed to have been so cruel to her. However, as this connection deepened, Logan began to realize he was playing a dangerous game. He was about to cross a line, one that could change everything, and perhaps there would be no turning back. But when he learned of the pregnancy, everything became clear. Evelyn was not just someone he was helping, she was someone he wanted to build a future with. And that future he knew would not be easy. The revelation shook his world in a way that left him dazed. His carefully constructed life was about to crumble before him. The news that Logan, the vice president of one of the largest banks in New York, had gotten a homeless woman pregnant spread quickly among his acquaintances. The reactions were predictable: shock, ridicule, disdain. The city's elite, always ready to judge, wasted no time in drawing conclusions about what had happened. To many, Logan had become a joke, someone who had been hooked by a gold digger. Evelyn, realizing the impact this was having on Logan's life, tried to distance herself, but he wouldn't allow it. "You're part of me now," he said, determined to face the consequences of his decision. But this decision would come at a high cost. Friends distanced themselves. The superficial relationship he had with Charlotte ended in a very public and humiliating manner, and even his position at the bank began to be questioned. Amidst this turmoil, Evelyn began to shut down again. Logan felt she was disappearing from his life, like a shadow dissolving at dawn. He tried to hold on, to maintain the connection they had built, but felt she was slipping away, more and more distant. When she finally vanished from his life without a trace, he found himself alone, with a void that no amount of money could fill. 2 years passed, and Logan never gave up trying to find her. But fate seemed to have other plans. He encountered her again in one of the most unlikely places, a gala event where the rich and powerful of New York gathered. There was Evelyn, but this time, she wasn't the fragile, lost young woman he had known. She was radiant, confident, and surrounded by a group of people who clearly respected her. Logan was stunned to discover the truth. Evelyn, the woman everyone had scorned, was actually the lost heiress of one of the country's greatest fortunes. She had distanced herself to protect herself and their child, and to see who Logan truly was. When he approached her, filled with questions, she simply smiled. But the smile wasn't one of happiness, it was one of knowledge. "Now you know," was all she said. The complications that followed were intense. Logan desperately tried to win Evelyn back, but she was different, stronger, more cautious, and still marked by the pain of the rejection and prejudice they had faced. At the same time, Charlotte, humiliated by the turn of events, allied with Alberto, a former partner of Logan's, to destroy what was left of his career and reputation. But Logan was not someone who gave up easily. He used all the resources he had to protect Evelyn and their child, and when he finally uncovered Charlotte and Alberto's plan, he publicly exposed them, ensuring they would pay for their actions. With Evelyn by his side, he revealed Alberto's crimes, securing his arrest, while Charlotte lost all the social prestige she once had. In the end, Evelyn and Logan realized that despite everything they had been through, the love they had for each other was stronger than any obstacle. They decided to leave behind the superficial world that surrounded them and start a new life together, away from the spotlight, dedicating themselves to raising their child and finding happiness in simple, true things. Logan could barely concentrate on his daily routine. The bank, which had once been his refuge, now felt like a prison, where the expectations and judgments of others surrounded him like concrete walls. He had tried to maintain his composure, but the truth was that he was deeply affected by everything that was happening. The news of Evelyn's pregnancy, mixed with the disdain that now followed him everywhere, was slowly consuming him. Evelyn, on the other hand, had withdrawn even more. Every attempt Logan made to get closer to her was met with silence or short, almost cold responses. He knew she was suffering, but he also knew she was trying to protect herself, and, in a way, him. But this distancing was slowly creating an abyss between them, something Logan didn't know how to overcome. One night, after a long day at the office, Logan found Evelyn sitting in the small kitchen of the apartment he had rented for her. Her eyes were red, and he knew immediately that she had been crying. His heart ached in his chest, and for a moment he felt powerless. "Are you okay?" he asked, knowing the answer would be negative. I don't know, Logan. I feel lost." Her voice was a whisper, laden with pain and uncertainty. Logan pulled a chair and sat next to her, trying to find the right words. "We will get through this, Evelyn. I'm here with you, and I'm not going anywhere." She shook her head, tears finally spilling from the corners of her eyes. "You don't understand. All this chaos. It's all my fault. I ruined your life." "You didn't ruin anything," he replied quickly, holding her hand firmly. "My life was empty before you came along. Now, I finally feel like I'm really living." Evelyn fell silent, but Logan could see that his words were slowly penetrating. He continued, feeling the urgency in his heart. "I know this is hard, but I want you to know that I will be by your side no matter what happens. This is our life now, and we will face it together." For a brief moment, Evelyn allowed him to see the vulnerability in her eyes. But soon the mask of strength returned, and she stood up, gently releasing his hand. "I need some time to think, to process all of this." Logan nodded, respecting her need for space, but the fear of losing her was growing inside him. He watched her leave the apartment, feeling that the situation was slipping out of his control. He desperately wanted to protect her, but how could he do that if she kept distancing herself? In the days that followed, Logan did his best to keep his promise to be there for Evelyn, but the disdain and criticism continued to grow. Colleagues at the bank began making jokes behind his back, and the whispers became impossible to ignore. He knew he was being evaluated not only for his professional abilities, but also for his personal choices. What had once been a solid career started to crumble. Charlotte, who had already been a central part of his life, even if superficially, wasted no time in seeking revenge. She spread rumors, painting Evelyn as a manipulative woman who had seduced Logan for her own gain. What began as insignificant gossip soon turned into an attack on his reputation, something his superiors began to notice. One day, upon returning home, Logan found Evelyn's apartment empty. The only thing left was a short note placed on the table. "Logan, I can't continue like this. I need to find my own path, and so do you. I love you, but I can't be the cause of your destruction. Take care." The despair that engulfed him at that moment was overwhelming. He searched for Evelyn everywhere he could imagine, using all the contacts and resources he had, but it was as if she had vanished from the face of the earth. The emptiness she left was profound, and for the first time in his life, Logan felt completely lost. 2 years passed since Evelyn's disappearance, and Logan had transformed into a different man. He still held his position at the bank, but without the shine he once had. His life had become a monotonous routine, where he clung to any vestige of normalcy he could find. But the shadow of Evelyn never left him, and each day was a struggle against regret and guilt. It was during one of those days that something unexpected happened. Logan was invited to a business event, one of those formal nights where networking was more important than fun. He almost declined the invitation, but something compelled him to go. Perhaps it was the need to feel that he still belonged to that world, or maybe it was the secret hope that something, anything, could break the monotony of his life. Upon arriving at the venue, he found himself surrounded by the usual crowd: executives, entrepreneurs, investors, all discussing numbers and strategies with the same indifference as always. Logan kept to the sidelines, greeting a few acquaintances mechanically, until suddenly something caught his attention. In the midst of the crowd, he saw a figure that made his heart stop. Evelyn. She was there, but not as the fragile young woman he had known 2 years ago. She was stunning, radiant, draped in an elegant dress that accentuated her presence, surrounded by people who seemed to admire and respect her. For a moment, Logan thought he was dreaming. Without thinking, he approached her, his eyes fixed on her. When Evelyn saw him, their eyes met, and the world around them seemed to disappear. Logan was filled with questions, but before he could say anything, Evelyn surprised him with an enigmatic smile. "Logan," she said, her voice calm but laden with meaning. "I knew we would meet again." He was speechless. What was she doing there? How had she changed so much? And more importantly, what had happened during those 2 years she had been missing? Before he could ask any of those questions, Evelyn invited him to step out of the main hall to a place where they could talk privately. They walked in silence to a terrace, where the noise of the party was replaced by the soft sounds of the city in the background. "I know you must have many questions," she began, turning to face him. "And I want to answer them. But first, I need you to understand why I did what I did." Logan was ready to hear anything, but nothing could have prepared him for what she was about to reveal. Evelyn began to tell her story, a story he never imagined. She was the heiress of a vast fortune, but she had fled that life for reasons she was only now willing to share. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in Logan's mind, but with each new revelation, new layers of complexity emerged. "I needed to find my own strength," Evelyn explained, her eyes locked on his. "I needed to know that I could survive on my own, without relying on anyone, without being defined by my past." Logan felt a knot form in his throat. "And our son?" Evelyn smiled, a smile filled with mixed emotions. "He is safe. I didn't want him to grow up amidst all of this, the judgments, the prejudices. I needed time to find myself before I could give him the future he deserves." The relief Logan felt was immense, but at the same time, he was devastated by how much time he had lost. He reached out to touch Evelyn's face, but she recoiled slightly, signaling that there were still obstacles between them. "Logan, we have both changed. And I don't know if what we had before can still exist, not after everything we've been through." The uncertainty in her voice made Logan's heart ache. He knew that winning Evelyn back would not be easy. What once seemed like a destined love was now something he would have to fight to reclaim, one step at a time. Logan left the event with a mix of conflicting emotions. Seeing Evelyn again had ignited a spark of hope in his heart, but it also brought to the surface the harsh reality that, despite the years that had passed, the chasm between them was still vast. She had become a strong, independent woman full of mysteries that he barely began to unravel. He knew he would have to fight with all his strength to regain his place by her side and, more importantly, to be present in the life of the son he had never known. In the following days, Logan dedicated himself to re-establishing contact with Evelyn. He sent messages, tried to find her at similar events, but she kept a cautious distance. The few conversations they had were brief and formal, laden with subtext and unexpressed feelings. Evelyn was clearly protecting herself and, more importantly, protecting their child. But while Logan focused on rebuilding this relationship, another storm was brewing. Charlotte, still hurt by the public humiliation and the loss of her social standing alongside Logan, began to devise a plan to completely destroy his life. She knew that she couldn't do much on her own, so she sought an alliance with Alberto, a former business partner of Logan, who had his own reasons for wanting revenge. Alberto had always felt that Logan had unjustly overshadowed him, taking credit for projects they developed together and benefiting alone from promotions. When Charlotte approached him, with her usual charm and promises of vengeance, he didn't hesitate to accept. Together, they began to plan how they could ruin Logan's career and, if possible, take everything he had built. Logan, however, still oblivious to this growing threat, focused on how he could prove to Evelyn that he was no longer the superficial man she had left behind. He volunteered to help with discreet philanthropic projects, quietly funded organizations that assisted vulnerable women, and started actively participating in causes that made a real difference in people's lives, all without fanfare, without seeking recognition. He wanted his actions to speak louder than any words. Finally, after weeks of attempts, Logan managed to schedule a meeting with Evelyn. They met in a small cafe, away from prying eyes. The place was simple but cozy, the kind of environment where they could talk without worrying about interruptions. "Thank you for coming," he began, visibly nervous. "I know it was difficult for you to agree to this meeting, and I want you to know that I truly appreciate it." Evelyn nodded, her expression reserved. "I'm here because I want to understand what you really want, Logan. If you're doing this out of guilt, out of responsibility, or if you truly believe we can rebuild something of what we had." Logan took a deep breath. "I want you to know that everything I'm doing now is because I believe we can have something stronger, more genuine than before. It's not about guilt or responsibility. I've changed, Evelyn, and every day away from you and our son only reinforces how much I want to be part of your lives." Evelyn studied him for a moment, looking for any signs of insincerity, but what she found was only genuine vulnerability. Still, she wasn't ready to let her guard down completely. "I believe that you have changed, Logan, but I also believe there is much more at stake now. I can't just trust blindly." He nodded, understanding. "I don't expect you to trust me immediately. I just want the chance to prove that I deserve your trust back." The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. Evelyn wanted to believe in him. She wanted to open the doors to what they could have together, but the fear of being hurt again was strong. "You'll need more than words to convince me," she finally said, her voice firm but not without a hint of hope. "I know," Logan replied, with a determination she hadn't seen before, "and I will do whatever it takes." The meeting ended on a cautiously optimistic note. Evelyn wasn't ready to fully surrender, but Logan had planted a seed of hope in her heart. He knew the road ahead would be tough, but he was prepared to face every obstacle. What Logan didn't know, however, was that the threat from Charlotte and Alberto was closing in. While he focused on winning Evelyn back, they were moving their pieces on the board, ready to deliver the final blow that could ruin his career and personal life. It was on a rainy afternoon, during an important business meeting, that Logan received the news that chilled him to the bone. Alberto had used his access to confidential information to manipulate a series of negotiations, making it seem as though Logan was involved in illegal and unethical activities. The accusations were severe and soon began to circulate among his superiors and business partners. The initial reactions were ones of shock and disbelief, but as the rumors spread, the confidence his colleagues had in Logan began to waver. What had seemed like an impenetrable career was now under serious threat, and the possibility of a formal investigation became a very real danger. Logan tried to contact Evelyn, wanting to explain what was happening before she heard it from someone else, but his efforts were thwarted when she, already aware of the rumors, began to doubt him once again. The fragile trust they were starting to rebuild was shaken, and Logan found himself fighting once more to keep everything that mattered intact. But Logan was no longer the man who would run from a fight. He knew that to protect Evelyn, his son, and his own honor, he would have to confront Alberto and Charlotte head-on. And for that, he needed to expose their sordid plans before it was too late. Determined to turn the tables, Logan began investigating Alberto and Charlotte's actions, gathering evidence that could not only clear his name, but also bring justice to those who sought to destroy him. He knew he was racing against time and that every wrong move could be fatal, but his determination to protect those he loved gave him renewed strength. Evelyn, although hesitant, began to realize the intensity of Logan's efforts. She saw the sincerity in his actions, how he was willing to sacrifice everything to ensure the safety and justice for the family they had barely begun to build. Gradually, the ice around her heart began to melt, and she allowed herself to consider the possibility that Logan had truly changed, that he deserved a second chance. As Logan got closer to the truth, Charlotte and Alberto began to feel the walls closing in. What had once seemed like an infallible plan started to crumble as Logan, with the help of some unexpected allies, managed to expose their dirty maneuvers. Time was running out, and soon the moment of the final confrontation would arrive, a confrontation that would define the future of everyone involved. Evelyn, now closer to Logan than ever, was preparing to face her own fear of trusting again. The future that had once seemed impossible was within reach, but to grasp it, both would have to fight against the ghosts of the past and the threats of the present. Logan felt the weight of the moment as he prepared for the confrontation that would determine the future of everything he had fought to protect. The evidence he had gathered against Charlotte and Alberto was carefully organized, but he knew that the truth alone would not be enough. He would need something more, something that could take down his enemies definitively, leaving no doubts or openings for a counterattack. The pressure was intense, but Logan had transformed over the years. The insecurity that had once paralyzed him now gave way to fierce determination. He knew he was fighting not just for his career or reputation, but for the chance to build a future with Evelyn and their son. And that motivation gave him strengths he hadn't known he possessed. As he prepared, Evelyn stood by his side, watching every movement. The tension between them had lessened, replaced by a silent understanding of what was at stake. She knew Logan was risking everything, and that deeply affected her. Part of Evelyn still feared allowing herself to trust completely, but another part, the part that remembered the man Logan had always wanted to be, began to lean toward hope. "Logan, are you sure this will work?" Evelyn asked, her voice soft yet filled with concern. He paused for a moment, looking at her with an intensity that made her feel the full weight of the situation. "I have no other choice, Evelyn. If we don't do this now, they will destroy everything, and I can't allow that to happen. Not with you, not with our son." Evelyn nodded, understanding the gravity of the decision. She stepped closer, holding his hand firmly. "Then I'm with you. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." The warmth of Evelyn's hand in his gave Logan the final strength he needed. He pulled her close, sealing that moment with a brief yet meaningful kiss. They had been through so much, and now everything was about to culminate in what could be the definitive victory, or a devastating defeat. On the day set for the confrontation, Logan entered the building where everything would be decided, with Evelyn by his side. Charlotte and Alberto were already there, their expressions filled with confidence and disdain. They believed they had control, that Logan was merely an easily removable obstacle. But Logan had a surprise for them. He had not only gathered proof of Alberto and Charlotte's actions, but also testimonies from people they had harmed over the years. People who, like Logan, had been injured by the greed and cruelty of the two. And now, all these voices would unite to take them down once and for all. "Logan," Alberto began with a smug smile, "you should have accepted your defeat. But as is typical of you, you thought you could outsmart us. I'm sorry to say, but this is your end." Logan looked at him, not allowing anger or fear to show. "What you don't understand, Alberto, is that the truth always finds a way to come to light. And when it does, no one can stop it." With a determined gesture, Logan handed over the documents and evidence to the council and the authorities present. Charlotte and Alberto's expressions began to change rapidly. The smile of superiority gave way to disbelief, then to fear. Every document, every testimony read was a stake in the heart of their plans. What they thought would be a guaranteed victory was turning into an imminent defeat. "This is ridiculous!" Charlotte exclaimed, desperately trying to maintain control. "These accusations are absurd. Everyone knows Logan is just trying to get revenge because he lost everything." But the evidence was overwhelming. One by one, the members of the board and the authorities present recognized the weight of the evidence. The farce that Charlotte and Alberto had constructed began to crumble before their eyes. "You used the power you had to harm others, to manipulate situations and destroy careers," Logan said, his voice firm and unwavering. "But now, this ends." Alberto, feeling that everything was lost, attempted to leave the room but was immediately stopped. The charges against him were serious, and imprisonment was inevitable. Charlotte, on the other hand, stood paralyzed, watching her life crumble in a matter of minutes. All the prestige and power she had so valued were now nothing more than dust. As the two were taken away by the authorities, Logan felt a huge weight lift off his shoulders. He had done what needed to be done. He had protected his family and ensured that the truth prevailed. Evelyn approached Logan, her eyes filled with a mix of relief and admiration. "You did it. You really did." Logan looked at her, feeling a calm he hadn't experienced in a long time. "I did it because I needed to protect you, to protect our future." She smiled, and this time it was a smile full of confidence and love. "I know. And now we can finally move forward." With the fall of Charlotte and Alberto, the path was clear for Logan and Evelyn to rebuild their lives. There was much to be done, many wounds to be healed, but they had one thing they had never had before: a future together, with the promise that whatever came next, they would face it together. What had begun as a simple act of kindness on that cold street in New York had now culminated in a new beginning, a life built on love, redemption, and the strength to fight for those we love. The air was fresh and clean, a contrast to the tension of the past months. Logan and Evelyn walked side by side in a quiet park, away from the turmoil that had surrounded their lives for so long. Each step they took together seemed to seal the silent commitment they had made to each other, to start anew, but this time with more honesty, trust, and love. They stopped by a small lake where the gentle sound of the water brought a sense of peace that they both longed for. Evelyn looked at Logan, realizing how much he had changed. The man beside her was now someone who had faced his demons, someone who had chosen truth and integrity, not just for her, but for himself and their child. "It's been a long journey," she said, her voice soft with both relief and a hint of weariness. Logan nodded, taking her hand in his. "Yes, it has. But I think every step was worth it." They fell silent for a moment, simply appreciating each other's presence. There was no more urgency or need for words. Everything they needed to say had already been expressed in Logan's actions, in the choices he made, and in the determination he showed to protect his family. "There's something I need to tell you," Logan continued, breaking the silence. "I know that nothing I did can erase the past, but I want you to know that I'm here to build something new with you, a future that isn't defined by the mistakes we've made, but by what we can create together." Evelyn looked at him, her eyes shining with a mix of emotions. "I believe in you, Logan, and I see how much you've changed. It hasn't been easy for me, and it won't be easy moving forward, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to let you back into my life, into our child's life." Her words were like balm to Logan's soul. He knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter, but it was a beginning he would never take for granted. "I promise you, Evelyn, I will do everything in my power to be the man you and our child deserve. I won't fail you." She smiled, this time without reservations. "I know you won't. We've both learned so much from all this, and I think finally we're ready to live the life we've always wanted, but never thought was possible." With this new promise silently sealed, they resumed walking, now with a clear direction in mind. There was an entire world for them to explore together, a life full of possibilities that no longer depended on the expectations of others or the mistakes of the past. A few weeks later, Logan and Evelyn did something that once seemed impossible. They bought a small, cozy house in a seaside town, away from the hustle and bustle and the judgments that had marked their previous lives. There they began to build a new routine, one that revolved around their child and the small joys of everyday life. No longer were there lavish parties or opulent social events. Instead, they started to appreciate the simple things: a home-cooked meal, a walk on the beach, the laughter of their child running freely in the backyard. Each shared moment became a cornerstone in the new life they were building, a life away from the spotlight and full of authenticity. Evelyn, who had fought so hard to protect her heart, now allowed herself to feel the happiness of a full life alongside the man who, despite everything, never gave up on her. And Logan, in turn, found in Evelyn and their child the true meaning of success, not one measured by money or power, but by love, respect, and the ability to face any challenge together. As the months passed, Logan and Evelyn began to get involved in causes that truly mattered to them. Together, they created a foundation to help people who, like Evelyn once did, found themselves without options and hope. It was their way of giving back to the world a little of the grace that, in unexpected ways, had united them. On a sunny day, while watching their child play in the sand on the beach, Evelyn turned to Logan, her eyes filled with peace. "We did it, didn't we? Against all odds, we found our happy ending." Logan smiled, pulling her closer. "Yes, we did. But actually, I think this is just the beginning of a whole life that we have to live together." And so, with the horizon stretching ahead and the sound of the sea in the background, Logan and Evelyn finally found what they had always sought: a home, each other, and the certainty that, no matter what happens, they would always have each other to share the weight and beauty of life. Their struggle was tough, filled with ups and downs, but in the end, what prevailed was their unwavering love and the courage to start anew. Together, they proved that true power lies not in wealth or status, but in the ability to forgive, love, and carry on, even when the path is difficult. And so, they began a new journey, side by side, with their hearts finally at peace and the certainty that true love always finds a way. We hope you enjoyed this narrative. Please leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more emotional stories that touch the soul. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. We would love to know what you think. Thanks and criticism are also welcome. See you in the next exciting video. Until then, and Logan in turn found in Evelyn and their child the true meaning of success. Not one measured by money or power, but by love, respect, and the ability to face any challenge together. As the months passed, Logan and Evelyn began to get involved in causes that truly mattered to them. Together, they created a foundation to help people who, like Evelyn once did, found themselves without options and hope. It was their way of giving back to the world a little of the grace that, in unexpected ways, had united them. On a sunny day, while watching their child play in the sand on the beach, Evelyn turned to Logan, her eyes filled with peace. "We did it, didn't we? Against all odds, we found our happy ending." Logan smiled, pulling her closer. "Yes, we did. But actually, I think this is just the beginning of a whole life that we have to live together." And so, with the horizon stretching ahead and the sound of the sea in the background, Logan and Evelyn finally found what they had always sought: a home, each other, and the certainty that, no matter what happens, they would always have each other to share the weight and beauty of life. Their struggle was tough, filled with ups and downs, but in the end, what prevailed was their unwavering love and the courage to start anew. Together, they proved that true power lies not in wealth or status, but in the ability to forgive, love, and carry on, even when the path is difficult. And so, they began a new journey, side by side, with their hearts finally at peace and the certainty that true love always finds a way. We hope you enjoyed this narrative. Please leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more emotional stories that touch the soul. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. We would love to know what you think. Thanks and criticism are also welcome. See you in the next exciting video. Until then,